with Raj Ramayya, one of the original members of the musical group The Seatbelt, who worked alongside Yoko Kanno as a singer-songwriter and collaborator with her. I'm going to be asking him some questions to see uh, what makes him tick, what his experiences were working with Yoko Kanno, and what it was like being a part of Cowboy Bebop. Are you ready, Raj?
I'm ready. That's a lot to take in, but I'm ready.
All right. Well, get more ready because I wrote some things down here, and we're going to start off where I believe we should by asking you to share what it was like, your journey into music, and how you became involved with the Seatbelts.
Well, I think I'll start with living in Japan like half my life. So I really started my music career in Tokyo, writing for a lot of independent artists in Tokyo and working with a lot of indie labels and doing a lot of session singing for TV commercials, which is where I originally met Yoko. I was doing some singing for some TV commercials that she was writing, and she was with a company called Grand Funk, and they were a TV CM production company, and I was like fairly well-known session singer at the time. So I was always in these little basement studios in Tokyo singing jingles, and this is in the late '90s. So I met her a few times and a lot of other composers for anime and games, basically through these session singing gigs that my management set up for me, and that's how I first met her. And then the story gets sort of protracted. We met again later on when she was looking for singer and songwriters to work with on anime soundtracks and for the seatbelts. So that was my first experience with her. I don't remember the name of the commercial, but I remember it was a kid's song for some kids product in Japan.
That's awesome. Well, I'm curious to go back even further and find
Mhm.
out what got you into Japan, and what were some of your
Mhm.
influences musically growing up that got you to want to pursue music?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Canada, right? But it was a lot of rock music, not a lot of jazz. It was a lot of rock um, and more rock, rock and rock and more rock and some metal and country music. And so when I moved to Japan, I went to school in Japan for a few years. I really enjoyed the fact that a lot of music in Japan was more jazz based and a lot more, I want to say, more technical than what I was hearing growing up in Canada. And people were very serious about their music careers. It wasn't about playing in a bar or anything like that. It was about really, really pushing the boundaries of what you could do musically. People would go to music school like you, Corey, and train and learn how to do things the right way. And I was just impressed with the professionalism of everybody in Japan. Literally every musician I came across was super, super professional about doing the music. And it kept me there. So I didn't think after school I thought I'd leave and go back home, and I just ended up staying and staying and staying and staying and just never left, and really enjoyed it, and learned to speak Japanese, and I was studying martial arts as well at the same time. So I had a fantastic experience, and it was the '90s, so everybody was in a band. Everybody had a flannel shirt on. Everyone was in a band, and I was having a great time. So there was no reason to go anywhere. And yeah, it just kept on getting better actually until about 2010, and that's another story.
Oh, well, we're gonna find out about that other story.
Yeah,
And nothing's more handsome than flannel. So at least I
right.
know you
Yeah,
were styling and profiling.
it's still cool. It's still cool all these years later, right?
Oh, very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
I actually have two follow-ups before we
Mhm.
even get into 2010.
Yeah.
One, I have never been to Japan. Do
Hmm.
you think inevitably when I wind up going that I will also never want to leave? And then my other question is actually answer that first, and we'll get to my other question.
The weird thing is when I lived in Japan and spending most of my kind of formative years in musically in Japan, there were no tourists showing up in Tokyo. It just wasn't a tourist place. It was like you were either going to school, you had family there. I had both, and so it just wasn't a tourist place. But and this is going to be a long answer to your question, but now it's literally every time I talk to somebody. I invited somebody to our Orlando show, and he goes, I can't be there because I'm going to be in Tokyo, right? And I hear that all the time. People are on their way to Japan, they're visiting Japan, they want to move there. So my question is, my answer is, you will probably end up staying there as long as you can, but it's not like it was before, where people kind of moved there and stayed for most of their life. Nowadays, it's kind of a transitional place where people go, stay for a while, enjoy Japan, and then move on to somewhere else in Asia. But you never know. I have so many friends who are still there, and every day I hear about people who are planning on this move to Tokyo. It's very hip these days to live in Tokyo.
Yeah, if I have the requisite funds
Mhm.
necessary, I might I might stick
Yeah,
it out
yeah,
as long as I can. Um,
yeah.
you want to tell us a little bit about 2010? Actually, before we get there,
Mhm.
I had another follow up, and I can't remember what I was going to say. Can you? This doesn't have to make it into the the final cut or anything. We can cut around it.
Okay.
But I had a funny question I wanted to ask you, and I feel like
Hmm.
um it would be lame for me to not ask this question. What was I gonna say? It was the Japan question. You a lot of rock music. There was flannel involved. Um, what else did you say during that blurb? I've totally lost my train of
Well,
thought.
a flannel, and everybody. I mean, everybody was in a band. It was like everybody was in the band in the '90s. It was crazy. I'd walk around Shibuya Station. Everybody had like a guitar, like those guitar bags that you strap onto your backpacks. Everybody seemed to have one of those, and everybody's walking around with a guitar. Everybody's playing in a band. They have all these rehearsal studios in Tokyo that you rent by the hour. They're everywhere you go. They call them Noah studios, and there's lots of other ones, but they're these tiny little rehearsal spaces where they've got all the gear, the back line's all there. You just show up with your guitar, and you rehearse, and then you play in these tiny little venues all over Japan. And it was so hip in the '90s and right until the early 2000s to be in a band. And everybody was in a band. Everybody had these little rehearsal studios. So I'd meet so many other musicians there. Like you'd meet super famous Japanese musicians in these little rehearsal studios all over Tokyo, people that would blow up. That's where everybody got together, at these rehearsal studios. So yeah, so that was the other thing, was just, yeah, everyone had a guitar, right?
It's yeah, that's similar to like the jazz musician lifestyle
Yeah.
where you go off to jazz school or you enter into a new scene and
Hmm.
and you have to go to all these jam sessions so you can meet all
Yeah.
the cats and that's how
Yeah.
you get integrated. And it's like very similar. You go to these hangs
Yeah.
and you let people hear what you can do.
Yeah.
And that's what does it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of Yoko Kanno, what was it like working with her? I know we've spoken over the
Mm-hmm.
course of the tour about your experience working with Yoko,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we got to let everyone know. So
No,
take it away.
she's an extremely professional person, hardworking professional person, very focused on what she's doing. So there wasn't a lot of social interaction with Yoko. It was more like, here's the job, let's do it, go in the studio and knock something out. And so I learned from her and other people that, it's the job is, I mean, they take it seriously. They may not take themselves seriously, but they take the job seriously. And I think working with her helped instill a feeling of professionalism with me and made me want to be as good as her and as good as a lot of other pro musicians in Japan, especially composers in Japan who I worked with a lot, that really brought to the table a wealth of experience and also an efficiency to everything. You didn't have all day, every day to just jam and make something happen. There were, slots of time. Studios were expensive back then. You needed to know what you were doing. You need to have an idea, a concept. And they always had a fantastic engineer, fantastic people around them, and always the time was limited. So the times I did spend with her, I learned to make the most of it. And I also learned that it is valuable to be prepared when you come to jobs. As I learned later on, you can't come in there half cocked. You have to know pretty much what you're going to do. And she had sent me home a few times saying that I didn't know what I was talking about or doing. And I remember it very clearly. We were working on that Will Strain song, and she said, "Oh my God, Raj, what's going on? This is not working." She said, "Go away for a while and come back." And so take a
Take a
vacation
vacation.
someplace, and yeah.
Yeah.
So I did. So ran off to Thailand, and I thought, okay, wait, I'm free for a few weeks here, so I can go to Thailand and get on a rice boat and just wander around and go to some full moon parties and come up with some ideas and then come back. And I came back and it turned out great. So she was right, but I'm sure she was there the whole time in the studio working. She never took a break, you know.
That cultural honesty, you hear about it all the time. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that is just a cultural thing. They'll let you know.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. I mean, people are super polite in Japan, but they can be super blunt too. So it's like both, right? So
I kind of appreciate it. No fakeness.
yeah, I mean the fakeness is for when you're trying to get a job done in Japan, the fakeness goes away. I mean the honne tatemae, the two faces go away, and then you end up with one face. Look, we got 2 hours. You got 2 hours. Let's get this done. Like, get to work.
Yep.
It's no messing
Chop chop.
around. Chop chop. Yeah. So it's very organized
Absolutely.
and strict. Yeah, for sure.
Yoko Kanno was probably one of, if not my biggest influence growing up as a young musician, especially in the field of jazz and someone that
Mhm,
loved anime.
mhm.
I'm curious, who was that for you if you had to pick someone? Who was your biggest influence musically growing up?
See, I didn't meet Yoko till I was already grown up. I was already like, I was already like a college student by the time I met her. So it was different, right? It was a very different kind of scenario. Um, Growing up, as I said, I was growing up in Canada. I'd be listening to bands like Rush. I don't know if you
That
remember Rush.
Rush is one of my favorite bands, Raj. You don't understand.
Okay,
You don't understand what you just did.
okay,
Uh,
yeah.
Rush. I'll tell you a quick story now. My
Mhm.
my dad's favorite band is Rush,
Oh
and
wow. Okay, okay, cool.
yeah, and so I became a huge Rush fan as well. And
Hmm.
when I was in high school, I
Yeah,
got a girlfriend. Okay, and I was I was obsessed.
yeah.
And my dad was like, "Hey, Corey, I got tickets to go see Rush
Hmm.
tonight." And I was like,
Right.
"Dad, I can't go. I'm hanging out with my girlfriend."
Oh my God. What?
Yeah, and then he took my brother instead,
Uh-huh.
and I've never stopped regretting that decision.
Right. And I mean, you'll never see Rush again. I mean, it's
Yep.
all over. It's all over. I mean, I've heard that they're trying to find not a replacement for Neil Peart, but somebody who can play those drum lines, who can, but I doubt they'll get back together again. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's just one of
I
those.
have to live with that decision now.
I did a cover of Tom Sawyer. I
Did you
did an
really?
Indian fusion version of Tom Sawyer. What kind of Indian fusion, right? I called this tabla player in New York that I know, and I did this version of Tom. I'll send it to you. It's an interesting version of it's electronic, and I've got horns in it and Indian tabla, and did my own version of it. Because when you listen to Tom Sawyer, if you take all of the progressive rock elements out of it and you boil it down to just a melody and lyrics, it becomes a hippie song. It's like a '60s hippie song. The world is love and light and dreams. Then you go, oh my God, this is like a truly like stoner '60s hippie song, and it's not really progressive rock when you take all that the bass and the drums and all those crazy guitars out of it. It's interesting to see that Neil Peart on how they changed that kind of almost science fiction hippie stuff into basically progressive rock, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we could talk about Rush all day long if you want
Yeah.
to, but we got to get
Mhm.
back to Cowboy Bebop at
Yeah.
some point.
Mhm.
All right, I'm gonna find another good question for you. Okay. Well, okay, so Cowboy Bebop is known for an eclectic mix of musical genres. I talk about this all the
Mhm.
time
Mhm.
when I do the VIP meet and greets or when I do interviews and things. I always talk about how Yoko Kanno is one of my favorites because she not only is a master of a variety of different musical genres,
Yeah.
like jazz, rock, and blues being the main ones that are implemented in Cowboy Bebop, but she has so many orchestral things as well as electronic things
Yeah.
and just really every musical genre. And then on top of that, she's able to emulate composers within those particular genres. And you can very quickly be like, oh, that sounds very much like a Bob Mintzer chart or a Thad Jones thing. And
Yeah.
and everything in between. She's very impressive in that way. How
Hmm.
did you decide on the styles that you chose to write with her for your collaborations with her?
I think that it's kind of the other way around. She'd choose the people that she thought would fit into what she's doing. And I think that for Yoko is kind of the way that she does things. She chooses people that fit the kind of visual media she's going to be working with, the kind of voices and writing, and then she brings those people on board. And that really is a typical pattern for a lot of composers in Japan. It's become that way here in the West as well. But a lot of composers for visual media, for especially for anime and games, will choose. They'll get their team together for a project, and they'll be like, "These people are the right people for me to work with on this project." So she can get a little flavor from them, a little spice, and help her or help other composers have being helped by other people and to sort of get some more legitimacy and authenticity into the project by bringing on people that have maybe lived those experiences or lived in those countries. I think that's kind of where Yoko is, and a lot of composers in Japan, especially. There, my friend Pierre Bensouzan plays with her. He's a French Algerian classical guitar player, and so she'll bring people like that on board, and they will fit the sort of project. And I think that's yeah, it's the other way around. I'm not making the decisions; she's making decisions and bringing people like me on board.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, it sounds like, I mean, so often throughout the course of the series and the soundtracks that Yoko wrote, there's this blend of jazz rock and blues.
Yeah,
And but there's also a lot of country and a lot of
yeah.
other elements as well. And I wonder if you had any insight as to what her thought process was or what your thought process was when it came to the way she wrote for a particular scene or the way
Mhm.
you wrote for a song for a particular character or portion of Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, I think it's all built on references, especially for Cowboy Bebop, because it is about it is really kind of mirroring American culture, right? But it's seen through the lens of a Japanese composer. So that's kind of how I look at it. American culture is seen through the lens of a Japanese composer, with the help of some American or Western songwriters and singers, etc. So I think the process was a lot of references. I remember getting a lot of reference material and using the reference material to inspire us to do what we'd probably do naturally. And I think that's really the whole thing right there. Finding references in American culture, taking them, improving them almost. I think of it also like cars too, because cars were invented in America, but the Japanese made them better and sold them back to us, right? So it's
Yeah,
kind of
I
like
love.
it's right. It's like that's kind of how I see it. They're just so skillful at emulating and making improving on everything. I remember having an argument with a guy one late night after drinking lots of beer in a curry restaurant, and he was telling me curry is a Japanese food, and I was like, that's really interesting. You'd say that, and we discussed it for a while. And he says, no, we've made it better in Japan. We've taken it and we've adapted it and made a better version of curry than the Indians ever had. So I was like, okay, interesting.
Well, now I mean, you are the epitome of worldliness, Raj, because you are
Yeah.
an Indian from Canada that
Yeah.
lived in Japan and now
Yeah.
lives in the States. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
trust you on cuisine and a bunch of topics.
I've had an interesting, very multicultural, very global spanning lifestyle. So it's been great. And I think it's brought a lot to my life, and I get to meet great people like you, and I get to
Oh,
travel and do things, and luckily, and I feel blessed that it's still going on all these years later. And it just I'm constantly amazed and surprised. Something cool's around the corner all the time, and I keep thinking, hey, it's all over, but no, something cool shows up.
well, that's the
Yeah.
thing. I mean, Cowboy Bebop is still going strong almost 30 years later. And I'm wondering, obviously, the soundtrack is heralded as one of the best anime soundtracks, if not the best anime soundtrack ever done. I wonder why haven't we had another anime come around that does something similar
Mhm.
musically? At least from my opinion, And
Right.
I love a lot of the music from a lot of different animes, but
Yeah.
nothing has ever delivered in the same way to me as a musician that Cowboy Bebop has. Why
Yeah.
don't you think we see that, haven't seen that again, or at least anything that, um, comes,
Mm.
tries to come to
Come
that
close to it.
level, tries yeah.
I have a theory on that. I do have a theory on that one. I think it's because it was so early on in the progression of anime and anime movies, and there was this different kinds of budgeting too. I think there was much bigger budgets for something like this,
Mhm.
and much more of an exploratory sort of exploratory sort of thinking. People wanted to try different things, and there was the finances were there to do it. And also at that time they were selling actual physical CDs and DVDs. So there was that sort of motivation too to sell them.
That's
And
interesting.
then they knew they could recoup. And so we had way more time and way more resources. And also we didn't no one knew what the anime sound was yet, right? So it was still like a chance to create something interesting. And I think Yoko was a real pioneer at that time. It was definitely she had more reach in the industry, and also she was with a company called Borderline at the time, and the owner producer for Borderline, Onta-san, was great because he was like he would just say just try stuff, and I think that they because it was so earlier on there weren't these limitations on anything, and I think it just grew into something beautiful. That's my theory.
That's awesome, and, I've heard that echoes a lot of what I've heard Wendy Lee say,
Yeah.
over the
Hmm.
course of our time together is, the budget for Cowboy Bebop being larger,
Hmm.
and allowing you guys to take your time
Yeah.
and to get everything perfect is the reason why a lot of because obviously one of the best dubs ever, Cowboy Bebop, and then you have one of the, greatest, soundtracks ever, Cowboy
Hmm.
Bebop. I think that the it sounds to me like the reason things aren't quite to the same level, anymore is because everything is rushed, like you're saying,
Yeah.
and,
Hmm.
that's kind of a bummer. Do you think that we would have more, iconic single season animes like we used to have
Yeah.
if they just like like the production time last a little longer. That's it's more expensive, but then you get these like forever animes that way.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to my friend Kevin Penkin, who's another composer that I work with, and he was saying exactly that, what you just said. If they had more time and space and budgets and created fewer anime, it would be better for everybody. And I agree with that. I think that they are putting out a lot of content, good or bad. I mean, it's up to your opinion. Um, but clearly, we don't have as many classics as we used to, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, so I think that if the industry understood that fewer anime and better quality is better for everybody, that would to me I think would make a lot of sense. But financially, that's kind of what it comes down to, right? Having more anime out there because again, there's no physical sales anymore, and I think that was a big part of it, right? Being
yeah,
knowing you're going to sell 100,000 DVDs or whatever, knowing that would be like, okay, so then we've got some time and some resources to work on this. But now it's streaming, and then it'll be bumped up against another anime in a week, right? And then
right.
there's
So
time. Yeah,
it's the time and it's the age of animes like Dragon Ball Z and One Piece.
yeah,
Like it complements those because they've been running forever and they will
yeah,
continue to run till the end of
yeah,
time.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
whereas your Cowboy Bebops and Full Metal Alchemists will
yeah,
probably you won't see those single season um,
yeah.
smash cult classics anymore quite as often, which is a bummer because I feel like we haven't had one of those in a while. We need
Yeah.
another Death Note, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I think that there will be some sort of sea change or shift eventually. I think people are you can see the fandom going like we need something more, right? I hear that from a lot of people. They because people love the classics and they keep going back to them. And what you're doing is a good example of how much people love it. So I think the industry is starting to recognize that too. I think because they're seeing that the classic IP stands the test of time.
Mhm.
and the new stuff just doesn't last very long. And I don't know what they can do about that, but who knows? Maybe they will start focusing on fewer anime and spending more time and energy on them. Right.
I hope so. That would be
Yeah.
great. I miss the Trigun days, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, um, let's move on to I
Mhm.
know you were at that very first Seatbelts concert. I've seen some prints that you have at our
Yeah.
shows where with pictures with Yoko Kanno and all of them. And I want to know what was that concert like? Uh, how was the audience? How was the energy? Was where did that fall in terms of when the anime was released? Give me the details of that show.
It was some time after the anime was released. I remember seeing some magazine articles about Cowboy Bebop coming out, and then the first show was at Shibuya Axe. The crowd. I mean, it was a full house for sure, and of course the band were amazing. I think that I was just kind of surprised when I saw the audience, and I saw everybody with little plastic bags, and I was like, what is that? Like, why does everybody have a little plastic bag? But apparently people would bring their souvenirs of the show, or they'd get souvenirs of the show, and then they'd buy stuff even before the show started. And it was my first experience to look out in the crowd and go, wow, these are otakus, right? It was like I'd never seen so many in one place before. And at that time, that wasn't actually a very nice thing to say to people. You're an otaku. Now it's become a I don't know, what would you call it now? Otaku's become a
Term of
um,
endearment.
term of endearment. Yeah, yeah, exactly. A term of endearment. At that time, it wasn't. And I remember I was thinking, God, what a bunch of otakus. And then I said it to somebody, like, oh, Raj, you shouldn't say that. And I was like, but that's what's going on, right? We've got a whole house full of them here. Um, and then after that, I just started to notice it really blossoming, that whole culture blossoming and people accepting it as something cool, right? It wasn't cool to
Yeah.
be, yeah, yeah. So
Weebs and nerds, you
we've
know,
been there, yeah, yeah,
those are both terms of endearment now. Where
yeah.
I remember when you could be called a nerd, you'd be like, "I'm not a nerd," and then like now I'm like, "I'm absolutely a nerd."
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I love it.
yeah, yeah.
I love being a nerd. Um, let's find another cool question here. Um, all right, I can ask how has your musical style evolved at all since your time playing with the Seatbelts and writing with Yoko Kanno? Has there been anything that has shifted the way that you think about music since
Mm.
those years in the late '90s?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I've been really, really fortunate. I've worked with like so many different artists in Japan, on lots of albums I've never released in the West, on so many labels and production companies. And I think that route, what I did with Yoko, and that kind of style, kind of it really is my cultural background too. So I think that I've kept a bit of that, and then I've learned a lot from working with so many Japanese artists and American and Canadian artists. So I think I've changed. I think I've gotten better, but I think the lessons you first learn stick with you about crafting really, really good songs, really good hooks, and really good sort of great production values as well in my own music. So again, I've been very lucky to work with a ton of great people, and every time I take something away from them, and every time I think back, I'm very lucky that I had a mentor like Yoko to start with when I was getting started, to show me the right way to do things.
Mm, that's great. And I wonder, do you have anyone you're working or collaborating with right now? Uh,
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, that you can tell us about. I'm not sure. Maybe
Yeah,
some things are
yeah, I'm working
super
right now.
secret.
Well, yeah, no, it's not a secret. Lotus, yeah, Lotus Juice from Persona. Persona Reload came
Oh
out
yeah.
last year. It's a huge IP. I'm writing songs with Lotus Juice right now, and for his releases, and I'm just doing a show with him actually next month, March 29th in San Francisco. So that's starting to blow up. We're getting lots of press about that show. He's an old friend of mine, and the crew from Persona are old friends, and I've been doing that. I think I mentioned before I'm working with Akira Yamaoka, and there's a couple of interesting things going on there. I can't say anything yet because it's not confirmed, But the Lotus Juice stuff is definitely confirmed, and we're already like halfway through it. So I continue to work with people in Japan, and there are some American artists that I really like, and I'm kind of excited because I think I'm going to get a chance to work with them, and they're associated with anime. They've been composers on some anime soundtracks. So again, I will let you know as soon as I get some confirmation on that. And I think that whole world of anime and games has become part of the mainstream. So when I mention the artists I'm working with, people are like, "Oh, wow!" Then they know them. I'm always shocked and surprised that people know these people. It's like crazy because when I started this, nobody knew who they were, and frankly, no one really got into it then. But nowadays, you say Akira Yamaoka, and I'm surprised how many people know his name, or Yoko Kanno, or Flying Lotus, or Kevin Penkin. People know these people, and it's great to see that they're getting the recognition they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how more informed people are nowadays and how much more they care about anime, and it
Mhm.
really does all go back to those early classics and Toonami and
Mhm.
the everyone in the States having that gateway drug into anime,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
now I think that was the big boom, so now
Yeah.
it's more popular than it's ever been. I think it's more popular in the States than it is in Japan. Um,
Oh,
I'm not
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. It's weird. Like when you go to Japan, you'll find that people don't know a lot of the titles that you know here. Like I don't even know how popular Cowboy Bebop is in Japan. I don't suspect it's that popular in Japan. It's here in North America where it's big. Really. I'm quite certain of that. There are certain anime that are big in Japan, and I play down in Mexico and Latin America fairly often, and down there it'll be other anime that'll be popular. So it kind of depends, I think, on the territory and what people are seeing at a certain age group, right? Um,
for
Cowboy
sure.
Bebop is a memory for a lot of people here, right? It was just Toonami, and it was everywhere at one point, right? And so it's got that presence here, but in Latin America, it's definitely like I mean, it's just completely different. It's Digimon, a lot of Digimon, Dragon Ball Z. You know,
Yeah.
it's different. Yeah, definitely different everywhere you go.
Pokemon's gotta be huge though over there,
Yeah,
so Pokemon's big everywhere in the
big
world. That's the
everywhere. Yeah,
biggest IP ever made, I think.
yeah. Sonic too. Sonic is pretty, consistent everywhere you go. And I just talked to some of the guys from Sonic today. It's interesting, and they're telling me they're off on tour doing the Sonic Orchestra and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Everyone's
I
out
love it.
there.
The
Yeah,
music from Sonic is awesome. I love
yeah,
the music from Sonic.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Everything you can even 8-bit, you listen to that, and it's got it all.
yeah,
It's hip. There's a lot of hip stuff,
yeah, yeah.
jazz-wise. Yeah, I love it. Alright, I'm gonna bring you to the wholesome portion of our show, everyone.
Hmm.
Um, I want your favorite, fan interaction that you've ever had. Do you have
My
one?
favorite fan. Oh, my favorite fan interaction. Wow, that's a good one. Mm, can it be somebody I played a show with? The favorite fan interaction?
Absolutely. Were they a
Okay.
fan of yours?
Yeah, they were. I played a show in Mexico with Lotus Juice, the guy I was talking about. This is
Oh,
a
cool.
few years back. We did a show in Mexico City, and literally this fan came up and wanted her breasts signed.
Okay, great answer.
Right,
Uh,
and then get this, she showed up 3 months ago and wanted the same thing again.
well, it probably, got,
It got
rubbed off, or
right. I was like, how?
she had likely showered by that point, so
Yeah, it was a permanent marker, so it probably stayed on for a while. So
for a good while. Yeah, she had to refresh
yeah, should
the,
refresh. Yeah, exactly. Good
absolutely,
album title,
absolutely.
right? Refresh. Come back
Refresh.
every yeah.
I believe the weebs, call that, the mommy milkers, but
Oh.
we can Google it. Um, we'll see if that makes it in. I like that answer though. I hope it does. All right. So let's see. We're winding down here, but I got a few more questions. Oh, this is a fun one. This is like one of the ones that I ask my friends in the car. If
Mhm.
you could collaborate or play with any musician, any artist, living or dead,
Mhm.
you haven't, who would it be?
Oh, sorry, you're cutting out there. One more time?
Oh, I was saying, if you could collaborate with an artist, living or dead, that you have not collaborated with, who would you choose and why?
Oh, good question. You mean in the anime world or just anywhere?
Anywhere.
Oh, anywhere. Damn, that's a great question. I don't know if I could. I'd have to separate that into anime and games and everything and then come up with an answer. Who would I'd like to collaborate with Rush, but that wouldn't work. Getty wouldn't let me get in there and sing anything, so that wouldn't work at all.
You guys
Um,
could sing together. A nice duet.
yeah, I think, honestly, I think Sting would be an interesting person to collaborate with. I would like, yeah, Sting, Paul McCartney, you know, uh,
Absolutely.
right? I just,
I've heard of Paul McCartney.
okay, you've heard of him. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I've heard of him.
So yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. In terms of anime, I'd love to collaborate with Joe Hisashi. So if this ever gets to Joe Hisashi, tell him I'd like to come sing with him sometime. So we can
We'll
never
send this. We'll tag
make that
him when we
happen.
post this.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Yeah,
Tag
tag
him.
him.
Tell him I want to come sing with him. So
Yes. Do you have any guilty pleasure songs that you wish you could do at a concert, but you decided not to before?
oh, guilty pleasure.
I like the
Mm,
song "Build Me Up, Buttercup," but that one's not making it into the show anytime soon.
Sukiyaki would be a good one to do at a show, right? Have you heard Sukiyaki? The Japanese
I'm
car.
I gotta listen
Sorry.
to it now. No,
No,
I'm just I don't know. I'm on the spot now. I feel like I'm supposed to be the anime music guy, so if I don't know, maybe I get
it's okay.
hate
It's okay.
hate mail. No, I'll look
We'll
it
cut
up.
that section out. We'll cut that section out.
Yeah, first thing I do after this is look that up. You got to send me the link.
It's not
Maybe I
really.
have heard it.
It's not an anime song. It's just a classic Japanese kind of song. It's
Oh,
like Country Roads or something like that, like the American version of Country Roads. It's like Enka, I guess Enka pop or something like that. Enka's that Japanese kind of folk pop music that every song everybody knows. And yeah. Anyway, yeah.
yeah. All right, awesome. Well, I have one more question for you,
Yeah.
Raj.
hmm
What if anything would you like to tell the fans of Cowboy Bebop who are listening to this podcast
hmm
right now? What message do you have for
Come see Cowboy Bebop live. I will be there.
them?
I would love to see all of you guys. And you can, if you go look down here, here it is for upcoming tour dates. Yay, they're right here. I will be joining Corey and the crew at several shows on the East Coast and down in Florida. So I can't wait to see all you guys there. Yeah, come to the show, have a great time with us, and come say hi and give me a hug. Okay?
Oh, thanks, Raj. That's nice. Unplanned, completely
Unplanned,
unplanned,
completely unplanned,
uh,
spontaneous.
spontaneous with graphics pre
I
pre arranged.
was like, wow, that was fast.
Yeah, ready to go. Hey, what about you personally? How can fans of yours support you?
Join me on Spotify. I do my own music and I'm on Spotify. I'd love to have you come and check it out. It's not quite anime music. Well, you come and check it out. Okay, it's a very eclectic mix of different things. A little bit of anime, a little bit of Indian fusion, lots of sitars and tablas and trippy psychedelic stuff. And yeah, just join me on Raj Ramaya on Spotify. Come find me on Instagram. Say hi. Same thing, Raj Ramaya. Again, I'm the only one of those on both those platforms, so you're not going to get me confused with anybody else. There's only one Raj Ramaya out there, fortunately, so far.
I have Apple Music. Is that a problem? Do I have to get Spotify?
No, no, Apple Music's better. They pay better.
Okay,
Let's go for Apple Music. Yeah,
that's why I don't have Spotify. Is I can't stand. I can't
yeah,
do it. I would
yeah.
feel I would feel bad.
I feel like yeah. No, I know. I think Apple Music's a better choice too, personally. So it's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Raj, thank you so much
Yeah,
for coming in and doing this. It's great talking with you. It's great hanging out with you on the road. You're one of the most
yeah.
fun people to
Thank
play
you.
with on stage and
Thank
hang
you.
out with
Thank
after
you.
the
Thank
shows.
you.
And I can't wait to do it some more. We got some shows coming up, and it's going to be super fun.
Yay! It's gonna be my
So let's
first
do
time
it.
in New York too, right? So it's my first visit ever to New York. So it's gonna be, yeah.
What? How is that
Yes.
possible?
No,
You
I'm
know
telling.
that's like real close to Canada. You
Yeah,
could have
I know.
you
It's
had a lot of chances.
crazy. I know. I just never. You know what? I've lived all over the world, and I've never made it to New York. I don't know why. This is it. This is fate taking me to New York finally, and for a good reason, to go play with you
Oh,
guys.
thanks.
Isn't that great?
Uh, yeah, well, it's a great reason for us too. We're so excited to have you. It's you're have become a huge fixture in the show at this point. So,
Thank you. I'll
yeah.
I'll think about what that means later on. I'm like, I'll dig deep into that. So,
You get the crowd going, so
okay,
it's
awesome. Thank you.
all right, guys. Well, I guess this is it. 3, 2, 1.
See you, space
Cowboys.
Cowboys.
I had to take my ears out, made it easier.
Okay, yeah, there we go.